Okay, so next we have some lily pads. I want you to remember that as you're drawing them in perspective, they will get thinner and more elliptical, like skinnier from top to bottom. The more you're looking directly at them, if we're above them, they've got that beautiful round shape, but the more I'm looking at them, the like skinnier and longer they're going to be. So I'm gonna wet blend sort of the base on these. Looking at your research image, they're kind of painterly shaded. I like adding my yellows first, and then while those are still standing wet, I'm gonna start adding in some greens and some blues to help add some depth. I mix a little bit of burnt sienna into my greens to help make them feel a little bit more real, a little bit less crazy bright primary color. And then we're going to go ahead and start adding these in. So while everything's wet, it sort of is going to naturally blend on its own and create nice gradients of ombre. You can kind of pick if the coloring of them is sort of blooming from a center point in your research image where there's like a yellow goldish towards the center and then they slowly get greener as they move out and cooler, or if each piece has its own direction of gradient. I might consider making them get darker and colder as they move away from you and your river, if that's where you're putting them, so that what's closer to you is warmer with contrast. And then on the back, that it gets kind of colder as it moves into the horizon line. So now that I've got kind of a nice mix on these, a little bit of blue, a little bit of green, we're going to let these entirely dry down. And then they look like this when they're dry. Hey, I realized that you probably wanted to draw one of the, or have one of the flowers in there for your demo, so I'm quick adding one of the flowers. I like to draw flowers by starting a circle and then drawing kind of the center point of where that would be in perspective, and then using that center point to help me guide as I shape the petals out, since this one I'm drawing is sort of looking at it from a side, kind of 3/4 above, and they make that kind of spiky rising to the top. I'm going to start adding pinks from the base of the petals and bringing it up but not hitting the ends of them, since in your research image the ends of the petals are kind of white. So I'm almost painting around them to create the base and the depth of the petals, but letting them kind of come up to that shape on their own. The pencil lines are messy right now, but we can erase them out once we've added some actual color to it. So I've got a nice dark color here. I've mixed green with plenty of blue. It's pretty saturated, and I'm doing a little bit of shadowing and some line work. I'm shadowing the front edge, so when these hit the water, you can see there's a little bit of like lip that hits the water, helps them seem like they've got depth, and also some of the veining of the leaf. I will fully admit, I couldn't remember which direction the veins went on lily pads, so right here I'm making it up, and then I think about it a little bit more and remember that they kind of spin out like a wagon wheel from actually the stem point, which is up next to the heart shape. So those ones are made up, and I will do them better for the rest of them. But also adding a little bit of shading, bumping up my shadows so they have a little bit more saturation, getting some shadows along those front edges so they have some dimension, they're not so flat, flat, flat. And then I'm going ahead and adding kind of cast shadows on where they would sit in the water. And letting those shadows take the shapes of ripples, kind of the way we talked about painting the water in class on Friday. And going ahead and starting to shade what the water will be around them. Remember, you can always frisk it over something that's painted as long as you wait till it's already dry, or you could put masking tape over your lily pads, or you can paint around them. Since you're already doing kind of a lot of brush work for it, I don't think they'll be hard to paint around, but if you have a whole bunch of them, it might be worth frisketing them out. So I'm also taking that watercolor and just adding a little shadow to the back sides, so the furthest away from me sides of the lily pads, to help throw the front side forward. A little more purple and into the pinks to help add shadow to the flower. A little bounced and reflected pink in the water. Here's where I do the veins of the leaf a little bit more correctly. I don't want them too high contrast, so I'm doing them with a bit of water in them so they don't stand out too much. Lily pads actually don't have very strong veining. So I let that entirely dry, and I'm going to go ahead and start erasing out some of my pencil lines so I can make better choices about which pencil lines help tell the story of the flower and help give it like dimension and specific without being distracting. And then I'm using a white colored pencil to pop a couple points on it just to make sure everything's nice and clean and crisp. You can also use the white colored pencil to put a couple highlights back into your leaves if you want, or to add a little bit of like shaping to them. Then I've got another layer of kind of that blue-green, and I'm adding more of my yellows to it to kind of shape what the panels in between the veins can kind of come forward. So I'm using kind of a blotting motion with my brush rather than washes to create a little bit of texture and to help bring them into the light with that warmth as it comes to the front. Now I have a very saturated kind of indigo-y navy blue that I'm starting to do the ripples of the water, but I'm letting it also help build the shadows underneath the leaves and the flowers where they're sitting. So I can go ahead and kind of make those lines the deepest with the shadow sitting right underneath the leaf, and then let it taper out as I pull away from it to create the ripples. But that amount of contrast, that amount of saturation next to the highlights really helps sell the like water reflective quality. So I hope that this helps you begin to figure out how you want to approach these in your project, and let me know if you need anything else. Good luck.